Hello and welcome. We're talking tonight about low vision and blindness, and with me is a woman who has been blind since birth. My guest is Lisa Largess, who is the outreach coordinator for the Minnesota State Services for the Blind. I was lucky enough to hear her speak recently, and I was so impressed with her and also with the services that this state organization provides. So I wanted to share her with you and share what they do with you. Well, welcome, Lisa.
Thank you so much. It's fantastic to be here.
I'm glad we've got this half hour. We're going to talk and make the most of our half hour because there's a lot to cover. We were saying, I know I'm going to want another half hour with you. Tell us just a little bit about what you did, Lisa, because I find it so intriguing. Before you came to Minnesota to become the outreach coordinator, you're a Minnesota girl.
Yeah,
give us a brief outline.
Yeah, I grew up here. I went to Roosevelt High School in South Minneapolis, go Teddies, and I went off to college and then to seminary in the San Francisco Bay Area.
And you went to St. Olaf College.
And I went to St. Olaf College, go whatever. And
Ole's.
Ole's, there we go. And so then I worked in the Bay Area for many years. I was a massage therapist. I worked at a .com as a product researcher. And then I worked for a nonprofit advocacy organization, traveling all over the country. And then I moved back to Minnesota to be back close to family again. And this opportunity came up at State Services for the Blind. And when I was a kid, growing up in Minnesota, as a blind kid with my older sister, who's also blind, we benefited a lot from State Services for the Blind. And so when I heard about this opportunity, I thought, you know, this is kind of a way to sort of pay it forward a little bit. So, and it's been very much like that. It's been just this wonderful work to have to go around and talk about what's available in Minnesota for people who are blind or people who are losing their vision.
And when you say that your older sister is also blind, is it a genetic reason for the blindness in your family, Lisa?
Yeah, we don't have any other relatives that we know about who have the condition that my sister and I have. The rods and cones in the retina in the back of our eyes didn't develop, but as far as we can tell, it's a genetic thing, so yeah.
Before we did the show tonight, I've been doing research, of course, on blindness and low vision. And or just an aside too, you say that people who lose their sight as they get older or from an accident or something maybe don't like to use the word blindness.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
Low vision.
Right. I think a lot of times folks who are seniors, you know, or folks who lose their vision, they're just not used to thinking of themselves as a person who is blind, but to think of yourself as a person who is losing vision, I think can be much more comfortable sometimes. So
the words we use are important, aren't they?
Yeah, and people get to pick what works for them.
Yes, people get to pick. I like that. But there are sort of 4 causes of vision issues, loss of vision or blindness. And can I just mention each and have you comment briefly on them?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, of course, there's a lot more, but there's, like you said, there are 4 major ones, yeah.
I read that in the United States, the major cause for those adults here is diabetic retinopathy.
Yeah, that's true, and you know, that it's especially true in communities where diabetes is more prevalent too, and it's a serious condition, and a lot of times you don't know that you're developing it, so it's really worth paying attention.
Sort of insidious, but it is treatable if caught early. Am I right? If
caught early, that's the thing, and so getting your eye exams regularly is incredibly important. So yeah.
cataracts, I read, is the cause of most blindness in the world when we look at the entire world.
Yeah, except in this country,
surprised.
right?
Yes,
Yep.
except here. And is that because we are really on that in terms of people being monitored and being checked and then having surgery?
Yep, that's exactly right. And you know, you probably know, and I know folks who've had cataract surgery and something's not gone well, but now in most cases it's so treatable. So even congenital cataracts too now is a lot more treatable than it has been.
I read that I think about half of all persons in the country that are 80 and older either have had surgery or have cataracts.
Right, that's
so
right.
It's
yeah.
Pretty big part of aging, isn't it?
Yep, that's exactly right.
Then glaucoma, which is frightening for people. One of our crew members has it. It damages the optic nerve, I understood.
Right, yeah, from the buildup of pressure in your eye, and again, really worth getting your eyes examined on a regular basis.
And this pressure, as we age, kind of builds up too, doesn't it?
I think that's right, yeah.
So again, keep monitoring that, right? And then macular degeneration. My mother had that. I had an aunt who had that. Again, very, very common with the elderly.
Very common. For our senior services at State Services for the Blind, it's maybe 87–90% of all the people that we work with. Yeah.
Wow.
Pretty common for women of Northern European descent. So here in Minnesota, we got some of those, and now that people are living longer, the chances are of developing macular degeneration is a lot higher than it used to be. So growing old can be good, but there's stuff that comes along with it. And
that's not so good.
Yeah.
With the Northern European connection, is that because of people's ability to tolerate sun, do you think?
I don't know. Yeah, I'm right. There's been some connection between sunlight and macular degeneration, but I just don't know enough about that to be able to say.
But you said 87–90% of your population you serve. That's
of the seniors that we serve. Yeah,
very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, let's just take another little sidetrack. Tell us the mission of the services for the blind here.
Yep.
You told me there are about 3 main things you do.
That is exactly right. There are 3 things that we do. One thing that we do is we empower people to find employment. So we're not one of those agencies where you come in the door and we hand you a job. But we provide the tools and the training so that if you are blind or visually impaired, losing your vision, we will give you what you need to go out and get the work that fits what your goals are for your life. So sometimes that's, connecting people up with technology. Sometimes that's training. Sometimes that's figuring out how you can keep the job that you do have already. And then the second thing that we do is we provide access to print. So that can be Braille, that can be audio, or that could be e-text. And we do that not only for folks who can't see, but for anybody who has a physical disability that makes it difficult to read print. We keep people reading, that's what we say. And then the last thing that we do is we serve seniors. We help people stay safe and stay independent. That's our goal.
So each one of those goals is noteworthy. I mean, they're all such big goals.
The kinds of things that the people that work with our agency, the customers we see, are absolutely extraordinary. From somebody in their 80s or 90 who is learning how to travel with a cane and cook on their own, and while losing their vision to, we have folks who are engineers and computer analysts and then we have people who love books. So we serve amazing
A
people.
lot of reward
Yeah.
for what you do. I
That
bet.
is exactly right. Yeah.
I told Lisa before we started that I had some what I call just curious questions, that as I was thinking about her life and wondering what it would be like to not have our eyesight, I had some questions, and you said, shoot them out. You
Yeah.
said, no problem. So I was wondering, you've been blind from the time you were a baby.
Right? Yeah.
So one of my questions was, how do you understand and visualize what people look like that you love and that you're close to? Do you do it by touch? How do you do it, Lisa?
You know, I think I just have a wild imagination. So it's more about what people tell me that people look like. I put things together in my head. When I walk with somebody down the street and hold onto their arm, I get a sense of how tall they are. And all my friends are good looking, so that helps a lot.
Clark Gable.
Right?
And,
Yeah. Generally, yeah.
Yeah. So using your imagination, do you ever just want to say, I want to see what your nose is like, what your cheeks are like, what your...
I don't know why, but that's just never been tempting to me.
Your style.
No, right.
Another curious question. As a little girl, did you learn Braille? And how hard was that to learn? It seems to someone like myself like it would be so challenging.
So when I was a little kid, I remember being in first grade, and all of the other kids had these books that all their books looked the same, and I had this giant clunky Braille book, and I was so embarrassed. I did not want to read. And then I don't know when it was. It might have been a year later or 2 years later, and I had to do some reading assignment, and I was just a begrudging reader until that point. And all of a sudden, I was reading this book, and I got interested in it.
Do you remember what book it was?
I don't remember but I remember the moment, like, oh, this is interesting. So I think for me as a little kid, actually learning Braille was simple, but the idea of being a Braille reader was a lot harder to overcome.
So the psychological part
right,
of it.
I think so. For me as a
being
little
different
kid.
is not
Yes,
fun
exactly.
for kids, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
but now I love Braille. Somebody said it's the you touch the words and the words touch you, and I'm like, yeah, there's something so satisfying about it.
And that brings up another question I have. I have heard, I guess, and thought it made sense, that when you lose one sense or don't have one of your senses, the others become more acute. They're sharper. Is that myth or reality?
I think it's mostly myth. I like a lot of blind people, I think I use my sense of hearing better sometimes, but I don't hear any better than anybody else or smell anybody better than anybody else. I think that's just one of those kind of things that got started.
Old wives' tales.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a very good sense of smell, and I always thought, well, maybe that was because my eyesight's not so great. But I won't keep holding on to that idea.
Well, and maybe you do rely on it to a certain degree to help you out. Yeah,
maybe. And then my last curious question, Lisa, before we talk about the neat devices you've brought. People often say, oh, would you rather be deaf or blind? And I don't know why that question comes up so often, but it seems to. And what is your answer to that question?
Wow, that is an interesting question. You're right, people do ask that. I mean, I don't know. I have been blind all of my life, and I have come to love being blind. I love who I am, and so much of what has been important in my life and meaningful in my life has come to me because I've had to make my way in the world as a blind person. And so, I don't, being deaf would be its own adventure, I can imagine. So, I don't know. Try them all.
Well, I have read that people who talk about social interaction say that being deaf is more isolating by far. But I defer to you as the expert here in terms of
I don't know. There's an
loss.
incredibly rich deaf culture. So, there's just a lot of ways to experience the world in a way. And so
that's a beautiful way to look at it. Well, you brought some things along that I found so important in terms of resources for people. Let's start with this neat radio here.
Yeah.
And
here, I'll grab it here.
do you want to hold that?
Yeah.
And we'll have the camera woman zoom in on it.
All right.
So tell us about this. It's one station, right?
That's right. One station, one radio, and we were the first state in the country and the first station anywhere to broadcast a radio reading service. And we have about 500 volunteers who come into our studios in St. Paul and around the state, who read books, magazines, and newspapers, and they are broadcast over the radio.
And so every day you read...
Every day, 24/7.
A couple papers, right?
In the mornings between 7 and 9 here in the Twin Cities, we read the local papers. Outstate, we read papers around the state, various places, Duluth and Rochester and Fergus Falls, Mankato, places like that. And then throughout the day, we read books, all current titles. And in the afternoon, we read the national papers. And then we also read about 300 different magazines. So it's this really rich service that we offer.
And what's so neat, I thought, was when you talked about this, when I heard you speak before, I thought it was so important in a way that there's just one channel in a sense, or station. So we're not confusing people by having lots of buttons. And
that is exactly right. When we switched to a digital player, we really researched it and we thought, what's going to work best for people? Let's keep it simple. It's got a great speaker, so it's got good sound. It's sturdy. It's really really well designed. And our readers are fantastic. They're some of the best readers you'll ever hear. So that's our radio reading service.
And it's free, correct?
And it's free.
I mean, that's the best part.
Almost all of the services that we provide through State Services for the Blind of Minnesota are all free to our consumers. So,
well, next up here is the talking book
player.
Cassette player.
Yep.
And again, free.
Again, free. It's also a digital player, so we send these little digital cartridges that have recorded books on them. We work in conjunction with the National Library Service in Washington, D.C., and their regional library here in Faribault. But we can provide all kinds of books.
And people get to choose, right?
People get to choose. You can either choose from the catalog directly, or you can just tell us, hey, I love reading historical thrillers, or I love reading espionage, or whatever. I love reading nonfiction, and we will send you those titles. Again, we send those books out in the mail for free. You get them, you listen to them, you flip over the label, you send it back in the mail also free, and we provide the player.
So it's simple, it's immediate kind of turnaround.
Yep, right. And again, those players are really nicely designed, so they're simple to use, and it will speak to you what each button does, so you can learn it very easily. in listening to books is, again, one of life's great pleasures.
Yes.
So,
and you know, if you can't see to read, I mean, listening to read it's another way to do it that people get used to, I think, and
yes,
love the option.
That's all about having options. And I think a lot of times when you get older and you start losing your vision, what people miss the most is reading. And so having a way to give that back to people has been so fantastic. And again, with the radio, to be able to listen to the paper every day and not have to look at that crazy newsprint, people find a huge relief and so restorative. So gives them part of their life back. Yep.
Exactly. And keeping up in the world via the newspaper is so important.
Right.
Lisa, you also brought some special glasses. Can we have you model them, perhaps?
Well, I don't know about modeling them, but I'll talk about them. One of the things our senior services team does when our counselors go out and meets with seniors who are losing vision is they bring along some just simple aids and devices that we provide to folks for free. And one of the things that that people often really like are these glare reduction glasses. They just filter out various spectrums of the light spectrum. And the nice thing about them is that they have like an overlay on the top and on the sides. So if you are if you're relying on your peripheral vision, you don't get the glare from the top and the sides, so you can see better out of your peripheral vision than you might otherwise. They're very nice, and we have them in all hues. So
okay. And they would be healthy too for our eyes, wouldn't they?
Yeah, just
preventing
exactly
more light coming in.
Blocking the light a little bit and cutting down on the glare can make a huge difference for people.
Well, you also we've got a whole bag of special things here.
Of low vision aids and devices, but you know, I thought we would talk about something simple too, and this is just a check writing guide. So it's just a stencil that has the lines cut out for a check. It's really easy, simple, and again, it's like one of those things like, oh, all of a sudden you can do something that you couldn't do before. If you can't see your checks anymore, you can just follow the guide. And you know,
so it becomes obvious where you do your signature and the date, et cetera, et cetera.
Really, like practical, easy solutions. And you know, one of the things that's really helpful is if you're losing your vision and you're a senior, people experience a lot of depression, and that's, you know, that just comes with the territory. But if you can have an easy win, like, oh look, I can do that now, it makes a giant difference.
So control over some things that
exactly.
That,
look, here's something I didn't think I'd be able to do. I thought I would have to ask somebody to write my checks for me, and now I can do that on my own. Now it doesn't hurt to go outside because I have glasses that can cut down on the glare. Simple things like that. Yeah.
You have a real exciting high-tech thing I want to ask you about too, but before we do that, we want to give people who are watching your website and a phone number. So we'll put those up right now, and then I have a few minutes to ply you with some more questions about that high-tech special thing that we can learn about. But Lisa's website for the State Services for the Blind is www.mnssb.org. And if you want to call, the number to call is 1-800-652-9000. Well, you shared with me earlier something that I found just fascinating. We've got 2 minutes.
Sure.
But tell us what your phone now can do, Lisa.
I just have an iPhone, like anybody else might have an iPhone, and in there you go to settings, go to accessibility. all of a sudden there's all of these features, and I turn on the one that makes the phone talk to me, whatever's on the screen. So that's cool, because now I can hear the phone and I can hear the numbers as I dial them and all kinds of stuff like that. But the amazing thing about it is that people have come along and designed apps for the phone. So now I have an app to identify colors. I have an app where I can take a picture of a piece of text and have it read it to me. I have an app that identifies if I'm holding a $5 bill or a $1 bill or a $10 bill. I have an app that reads barcodes, so I can tell if I have a can of tomato soup or a can of mushroom soup or whatever. And so again, this is just like technology that's changing the world for people who have disabilities. And again, it's just on anybody's iPhone.
So it's something that if we practice, we can learn how to use these without too much trouble?
That is absolutely right. And a lot of seniors now, too, are getting iPads and things like that, and are finding that it's far easier to use than they imagined it would be.
Well, that I think could be a whole nother show. We could have you back, but
exactly.
That's so exciting, and it does just open up all kinds of worlds, doesn't it, for people?
It absolutely does. Yep, that is absolutely right. I mean, technology is changing the world for folks for the better, and so ingenuity and resilience and adaptability and a little technology, and you're good to go.
Well, thank you so much, Lisa. You've been just good to go with me for this half hour. I wish we had more time, but thanks so much for coming down, and it's been wonderful to learn from you and be inspired by you too.
Thanks for having me. It's a
welcome.
Great show. It's really been fun.
Thank you. And thank you for being with us. I'll be back again next week. Until then, have a good week.